Welcome back, CSC 103 or CSC 235 class to Rock, Paper, Scissors 2018. This is part 3, and part 2 got very long. It was one of my longer videos. It was very good though, very informative, but it was very long, so what we'll do is we'll try to make this one a little bit short. Now, what we did the last time is we got our images to display. We got rock displaying and we have our random image displaying. So we did that with our pickRock function, and it's very easy to just copy this function a couple times to do that. Now, before we do that, we might want to do a little bit more before we start copying the function. What we're going to do is we're going to put in, and this, I'll have to check if it goes against what the instructions say, but what we're going to do is we're going to put a little message that displays down here, and that'll tell you who won. And what I'll do first is I'll go to HTML, and I'll just put an area that we could do that, and this will be below everything, so it'll be below this container. So if this is your container div, there's your div class equals container. Make sure it's after there, and we're going to make an h2, and we'll just do h2. And again, if you use emit, you could do h2 # message, and that'll be the ID. Then I'll hit tab for emit, and it basically did that. And I'm not going to put anything in there because that's going to display once somebody wins or loses. It's going to display when the function goes. So there's nothing in there right now, but at least we have it. We have it all ready to go. That's where our message is going to display, and that's why we called it message. It has an ID message. And what we'll do is we'll go back to here before we copy anything, and I'll copy one of these because it's easier to copy this whole thing. And then I'll show you a way we'll make a variable that'll actually cut off half of this and save us some time. So I'm going to put get element by ID message, and what are we going to show in our message? Well, we don't know yet. It's going to depend on a lot of different things here, and actually this message won't really display until we know who wins or not. So let me just leave this blank for now. Let me just leave empty string here for now. So we'll just do that, but we have it in place because we have to figure out who wins first, because the message will depend on who's going to win. And what we can actually do too, if we go back here, let's just look at our instructions, because maybe I'm jumping ahead. We can copy these functions, and we know how to do that. That won't be hard. So even before we do that, this part, it says variables for messages. Instead of writing all these messages out and making all these custom messages, what you could do is make variables that represent the strings, which are the messages, and then we'll even put them together. So you could do like two parts, like one, if you win, whatever it may be, you could have that part as the you win part. And then if you won because your scissors cut paper, you could say scissors cuts paper. If you won because your paper covered rock, you could add it to that one. And if you won because your rock crushed scissors, you could use that. So we'll kind of combine these. If there's a tie, we'll use the stalemate. And if computer wins, that'll be the first part. And then because they won, there'll be those 3 reasons of why they won. Now, instead of typing all this, I'll make it easy for you. You could go here. I have a little text file under your documents and resources called var message.txt. Kind of where the assignment is posted, and if you click on that, it should just bring up a little text area here, and you can just kind of copy that. And I think there's other stuff, there's other messages we may eventually add to this, but we'll just copy this for now and go back here, and we'll put it up with our variables, and I'll put it after this variable, and these will be our messages. And notice I just called it rock, paper, scissors. Now notice it's rock image, paper image, scissors image. These are just called rock, paper, scissors. And this is called U, comp, and tie. And if you need to change these, but at least consistency, I am trying to keep them all lowercase. And these are just strings. So the var for rock is if rock crushes scissors. That's if rock wins. The var for paper is when paper wins, because the only way paper wins when it covers rock. And the var for scissors, the only time scissors wins when it cuts paper. And then there's the 2 choices. It's U if you win. It's comp if computer wins. And then the var tie is basically when they're the same. So we have all the kind of the options here that we're going to display. And they're going to display in this thing by saying get element by ID message, except we want to wait to see who wins. So this will be part of a conditional statement. So that's why I just kind of left this blank for now. I mean, I could put something there. I could put rock. Now that would be a stalemate. Now let's say I just put in here the variable. I wouldn't put strings. Let's say I just put tie, and kind of ran this again. There it says stalemate, and it just was by luck that they both came up rock again, but it says stalemate, try again, and that's actually the way it would look, except this can't come up now. It has to come up when it knows who won. because, you know, that would only come up if it happened to be a tie, and that was just luck. If I tried it again, now it's saying stalemate, but I lost, or I won because I crushed scissors. Okay, so we're going to have to use conditional statements to actually do that. But so I'll just leave that, I guess, an empty string for now. So I won't deal with that. I'm going to probably have to move that out of that area and into our conditional statements, which are going to be like if, and else statements, you know, which get a little more confusing. So, you know, we might even do some of that before we start copying and pasting things. So let's see what's going to work best here. I'll close that, which was the text. And now what it's saying is it's talking about doing the conditional statements. And you can see there's going to be an if, an else if, and an else. Now the way we're going to set this up is we're going to do the if is going to be when you win, the else if is when you lose, and the else is always going to be the tie. That way the third one, the else, which notice has no condition, the condition is inside these parentheses here. And that means if the random image comes up and it's scissors, that means you're going to win because rock crushes scissors. If the random image comes up and it's paper, it means you're going to lose because paper is going to cover you if you're rock. Now this is all if you're rock. And then the last one is if you just put else, because it basically means if it's not scissors or paper, it's going to be rock. And it's going to have to be a tie because this is all under the choose rock thing or the pickRock. So that's the way these things work. The only confusing thing about these, or that makes it a little more detailed, is that you have to, this is going to be inside a function. So this is the end of the function. It'll be actually two curly brackets. This is the last bracket of the function, of the pickRock function. And then each conditional statement has its own curly brackets, because it basically says if a certain condition exists, do something. And then if a certain condition exists, do something else. If a certain condition exists or neither of those exists, basically, then do this. And that's when it's going to display the tie. So we're going to have to do those if-else statements. So before we even copy everything, we could try it out, and we'll do everything just from the rock point of view, as if we pick rock. Now, this part, that's going to get displayed. That doesn't have anything to do with a condition on what gets displayed. The condition is set up basically after this stuff displays. So here's where the if is going to be. So I'm going to go right here and say if, and I'm going to put a condition in parentheses. And our condition is going to be if Rn, and it's actually, we're going to do this thing here, if random number, this image here, if we're going to say, well, if this equals this. So we're going to kind of look at it this way. So we're going to say if Rn img, and then the Rn, so we're basically saying whichever comes up, this is the random image. And we're going to say equals equals, which means equivalency. Typically when we use equals, we're assigning a value. But if we're determining equivalency between two things, we want to use equals equals. So that, make sure you do that. So we're going to say if the random image happens to be equal to, now this is the one if we win. And I mean, you could even do this. You could put a little comment here and just say if you win with rock. Okay, so if you win with rock, you picked rock. So that means if you win, they would have to have what? They would have to have scissors, because your rock would crush their scissors. So this would be scissors img, because that's the variable. So it's comparing the array index value versus a variable, and that's okay. And what's going to happen here is I'm going to put a curly bracket, and my first condition is going to say, okay, if you win, if the random number comes up as scissors, and you've already picked rock because you're picking rock. So if they got scissors, then what's going to happen? And now that's where I'm going to take this, and I'm going to cut this. And maybe you didn't even have to put it in, but I'm going to put this in here. So this is kind of the result of your condition. So this is kind of what's going to happen, is they're going to display a message. So if you won, now what we're going to do is we're going to say if you win, we'll say, okay, let's put the variable u there. So we'll say u, and let's try it. Actually, we could try it right now. Okay, we lost, so it didn't say anything. We won, and now it said you win. So that actually works. Even if we didn't put the other conditions yet, it still went to the condition where you won, and it basically showed that up. And it just says you win. Now we also want to add to that, we can do a plus sign. That's a way to combine variables together, or even combine variables to string. It's called concatenation. but we can just use a plus sign. Now we're going to say you. And now if I won and I know that I'm picking rock and I'm beating scissors, I'm going to use rock because my rock is winning. So I'm going to say you rock. And if I tried it again, eventually if I win, it'll say you win because rock crushes scissors. And that's the only way you'll win when you pick rock, is if it crushes scissors. So that's our winning statement there. So now we still have two other things, two other kind of conditions that can happen. And what I'll do here is I'll even copy this. I'll copy it and hit return. And you could even bring this up on this line here if you want. That's kind of the way they do it. Now it says if again. Now what you really want to do is an else if. So we're going to make that an else if. Usually you start off with an else, and then if you have other conditions, they would be else if. You could even have multiple else ifs. Now this condition, this is the lose. So if you lose, that means they have to, if you pick rock and you lose, they have to get paper. So this is the losing one here, and this is all based on you picking rock. So that means if they got paper, if random image happened to be paper and you have rock, you lost. So the message is going to be comp, because they win. We don't have a you lost thing. We just have the comp wins. And you could change that if you want. You could have a, you lose or something. If you didn't want to have a comp, computer wins. We'll have a comp, but I have it that way, so I'll leave it that way. And I'll have comp, and because they won with paper, we're going to say paper. So comp wins with paper, and that's kind of the reason. So now we have another condition. So if I click rock, you win, rock crushes paper. Computer wins, paper covers rock. So now that's the two. Now we don't have a tie yet. So if I get a tie here, it won't say anything because I don't have a condition for tie. So or it just stays the previous one. So we don't have a new one. It keeps the previous one, which is wrong. So we have to have our third condition, which is just going to be an else, and there actually will not be a condition. So what we could do, we could just type this. We could just say else, and then just put an opening and closing curly bracket. Now's when you want to be very careful that you click here and say, okay, there's my opening, there's my closing, and there's a statement inside. There's my opening, there's my closing, and there's a statement inside. Here's my opening, closing, no statement inside. So I need to put a statement in here, and this is the one that's going to be the stalemate. And I'll paste this in here. And again, this one's going to be tie. And it doesn't have to have anybody, it's just going to have one thing, and it's going to be called tie. And what we'll do with this one is if they're tied, it'll say stalemate, try again. Rock, you picked, now again, we're always picking rock. Maybe I should have put your choice and computer choice or something. Maybe it'd look better the other way, but that's the way I have it set up, so I'm not going to change it now. But if you pick rock, computer choice is scissors, you win because you can crush scissors. You lose because they can cover you, and you win, you tie, and so on. You win, tie, tied, you lose. Okay, and it says computer wins. So those are all the scenarios there. So we're going to try to keep it so that it's going to be the win, lose, tie scenario, so that we don't really have to, so that when you copy and paste all these, it'll be a little more consistent. You'll kind of know what you're doing. It'll still be a little confusing because look how big our function is already, and it's only going to get bigger because we're going to add more stuff to this. This is only our first function, but what we're going to try to do is copy this function and then just kind of revise it for the different scenarios. Now, one other thing we could do here is, and I don't think this is the order that I did it when I originally designed this, because I had us doing the color stuff later, but we could do the color thing now. And I think what I'll do, since we had that earlier video, which was real long, I think what I'll do is I'll stop and we'll just kind of, this one is just pretty much focusing on the conditional statements, which is, if you haven't done that, it's new. So it's, again, it's if, and there's a conditional statement in parentheses, and it's determining equality between the random image and another image. And if they're the same, meaning if the random image is scissors, you're going to win. And if the random image is paper, you're going to lose. And any other scenario, which would have to be rock, then it's going to be rock versus rock, which is going to be a tie. And basically what's happening from our if else statements, our conditional statements, is the result is just a message. We're not tallying up any points or anything like that. We're just displaying a message in basically an H2, which is basically a header which is smaller than an H1. So that's all we're doing so far. So that's part 3, and those are our conditional statements. And now what we're going to do is start copying and pasting. I think what we'll do first is maybe color these things, because that might be a little break from all this copying and pasting. And then we'll copy and paste to the other buttons and make sure our other buttons work.